Hello, and welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement, the only mental health variety game show that wants you to build your emotional endurance alongside us. This week's episode is dedicated to your one friend who's dreading something. I want to be excited. I really do. I've waited my whole life for this. It's a big day, and I know at the end of it, there's going to be a really great time. But I just can't stop dreading it. Seems like a lot of work to do that, and I just really don't want to do it. Ever since I was just a little fish, they told me, one day you're going to swim upstream. And they said that that was going to be a good thing, but that is it's going to be a lot. Not to mention, what if I get hooked or eaten by another bigger fish on the way there? It sounds like not that great of a time is what it sounds like. And I know I should be excited, but and part of me is, but mainly I am dreading swimming upstream. I'm not looking forward to it, and I just kind of wish I didn't have to. You know? You know the one.
Oh, I know the one. Our insight of the week this week is from Mark Twain. And I gotta be real, I don't know if it really comes from Mark Twain, but it says attributed to Mark Twain. So I'm gonna roll with it because I love it because this is me in a nutshell. I worry and worry about things that never happen. I think I'm an expert at it. I spend a lot of my time dreading what's going to happen based on a narrative that my brain writes. Usually ends up not being true, but as it triggers a whole response because I'm reacting to a situation that is not real. It is just a manifestation of what I dread happening. So I loved it. What do you think, Lori?
I totally love it. And in fact, I'm looking up because it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Seneca, the ancient Greek philosopher, where he says, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And I think that's exactly what Mark Twain is communicating to us in this moment.
Yeah.
Which so much of our life can get wrapped up in these imaginations of what could happen. And because our brain defaults to keeping us safe and alive, usually those have a very worst case scenario, apocalyptic kind of vibes about them. And usually it's not that bad. Sometimes it is, but sometimes in the case of my famous yacht, my favorite coping skill, where if you think of well, maybe not my favorite, but it's one of the faves. You think about the worst case scenario, you also have to think about the best case scenario.
Went out with a friend last week. They're going through a breakup, and they were having to meet up with their ex, and they were doing this. They were dreading it because they had written the narrative, and it was really fun to do the ... yacht to them. And one, because we know how great I am at that coping skill. So, it's great to preach something you don't practice. But in going through the exercise with them, he realized how many good things could happen and how to reposition the dread, not to the false narratives he was creating.
Absolutely, because it's all a spectrum, right? And most likely it's not the worst thing or the best thing that's going to happen. It's something in the between. So anything you can do to pull out that spectrum and allow you to see that nuance better is going to immediately reduce your discomfort and help you be more compassionate to yourself. But it is hard because we tend to like to believe all the things that we think. That's the breaking of the pattern, right? Being willing to not believe the worries and the thoughts and the angst that we believe in our minds is real or definitely going to be real. And then it turns out just to be another figment. Because the truth is, nothing in life looks exactly the way that we think it will. Nothing. There's never been a time. Never. It just doesn't. So if you use that as just that's the ground floor baseline, it makes a lot of this stuff a lot more accessible to integrate into your life. Because the truth is that our brain does a really poor job of predicting exactly what's going to happen.
And
But
if
on
life
the
was
overall macro, it does well because it keeps us alive. But in the micro around our relationships and nuance, it sucks.
and it's also part of why you have to develop coping skills and how to deal with it before you're in the moment. Because if we're always fighting our brains. Our brains are very powerful muscles that control a lot of what happens in our lives. And I'll tell you, it's really good at finding the worst case. It's really good at doubling down on it.
So if finding the worst case scenario was an Olympic sport, I would like to say that you and I would have a run for the money.
You're so positive. I don't think
But what you don't understand, though, what you don't see is how many of those negative thoughts, like my OCD is really good at bringing up the worst case scenario. And what I've had to do because of my unique mental health journey is I've had to learn a way to really be non-reactive to my thoughts. And I think a lot of people, because I'm slower to respond because of this, I've noticed that my responses are more intentional and slower, which is not a bad thing. That's what I want. But actually, people find it pretty off-putting. And people think I'm mad a lot. They think I'm mad a lot or that I disagree. Or I've had several issues around this recently. The other thing is I use a lot of silence for that same reason, right? Because I'm dealing with, okay, that's the worst, but that's my OCD talking. That's not actually really relevant to the situation. Truly, it's not. My OCD will come up with things that are like wacky out there, weird. But what people don't realize is that silence and that slowness to respond isn't actually about them or my experience of them. It is about my own internal experience. And it's weird because this is me doing the work and I'm actually getting some resistance from the world around me to continue doing the work. But I will say I've done it for long enough now that I know how much peace it brings me to be able to handle that part of me in a different way. And so if the cost is that it creates a little bit more awkwardness in my relationships and my communication, I will deal with it. It's well worth that cost to me. But the flip of that is when people are like, hey, it looked like you were really upset there and didn't agree with me or whatever the situation was. I have to be quick to be able to put forward, oh, I'm sorry. I think you're just misinterpreting. My thinking process, my cognitive processes, I'm just a little bit slower to respond. I ask more intentional questions and there is more silence that I use. And it's because of my brain. It's not because of you, actually. It's amazing how many people think that your resting bitch face is because of them and they interpret it as theirs. And then they add so much drama into the situation when basically what they're saying is, I expected you to look like this and you didn't. But I didn't look that way because I'm on my own vibe.
Yeah.
And you don't need me to look that way. It's really nuanced.
It's a fascinating dynamic how humans have the ability to catastrophize, to go to the immediate worst case. But I also think it's survival, right? You got to vet the options. And I do think, especially when your life is trauma informed from a young age, it's natural for you to prepare for the worst because you just don't have the certainty in childhood. It's a hard habit to break. It's a great drug. It hits all the dopamine and all the things that keep us going, but it is so toxic to our well-being.
Yeah, especially unmanaged, undealt with, and undervalued. I think that's the other thing, too. It's amazing our brains can do that, but if we just let it do it all the time and it's just whiplash all the time, it's not good, to your point. Thank you so much for bringing that insight of the week, Crimson. I really, like I said, Mark Twain, Seneca, I think they're all telling us the same thing, which is that our mind and the power of it needs to be attended to. Now a word from our feeling of the week. Our feeling of the week this week is dread. Here's the thing about dread that nobody talks about. It's not really fear because fear often has an object, clarity. Fear says that thing right there, that is the threat. Dread is usually a little bit different. Dread is often fear with no address or no timeline. It just moves in and starts rearranging things. Dread lives in your body before it lives in our mind. It's that low hum in your chest that starts on Sunday night that doesn't seem to go away until something shifts or changes. It's the stomach ache that tightens before you even remember why, and it's waking up fine for exactly 4 minutes before it lands again. Dread is real, and it happens. It's ambient, it's atmospheric. It's the emotional equivalent of a sky that is about to do something it hasn't done yet. And here's what it makes especially exhausting. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between the dread of a perceived or upcoming event and the actual event itself. You are paying the full emotional price for something you have not even experienced yet and may not even experience. Dread is the suffering that you do in advance. It's your imagination working against you, your creative energy pointed in the wrong direction. So let's take a moment and think about, what are you dreading? And ask yourself honestly, how much of what I'm feeling right now is the actual thing or experience, and how much of it is the story I'm telling myself about it before it even arrives or comes into view. Dread is not the absolute end-all being of a feeling, but it is one that tends to take a lot from us when it just hangs around. And that's why it's important to know how to end the stress cycle of a feeling like dread, so that you can at least, at the very minimum, place an intentional pause on it while you wait for the reality to arrive. And that's all from this week's Feeling of the Week, Dread. And now it's time for this week's Show and Tell, the power of dread. Crimson, tell us. Show and
If you
tell
want me
us.
to show you this week's show and tell, we're supposed to be PG-13. I am going to talk about my boobs. Let's just clear the air on there. For those that don't know me, I'm a hypochondriac. I don't say that as in some of the Google symptoms. Like, I was in therapy for 3 years specifically for health anxiety. I am a hypochondriac. So it was my time for mammogram. So I usually have it in March, breast cancer awareness. I try to always have it done. Mine got delayed because of a whole bunch of stuff. But anyhow, last week was mammogram week and I hate the dread. And since we were talking about dread, I wanted to bring this to the table because it highlights the reality of dread to me because, not necessarily irrational, right? Dreading a mammogram, it is literally you're walking in to find out if you have cancer. By the premise of what it is, it's scary and it's going to drive anxiety and it's going to create dread. So I dreaded it. I'm happy to report I am cancer-free for now. There were no follow-ups. Sadly, in the waiting room, the girl before me, she didn't get to go home. She had a meeting after that, and my heart broke for her because we know breast cancer is 1 in 8 women will face this diagnosis. Thank God they will also probably survive it. But as someone that knows a lot of women with breast cancer currently and survivors, my heart broke for her. But given our episode talking about dread, I really had to think about how it was rational to dread it. But what I noticed about this year, so I'm over 40, I've done this before, and I have spent the last year practicing what we preach. Now, I know I should always practice what we preach, is what we sell. But the reality, I'm not always on top of it. But since we really hit the ground selling our products and working on emotional endurance, and since we're actually reading my bestie and business partner's book, Conscious Coping, I've been doing it. And what I want to report is that this year there was a lot of dread, but I was so proud of myself because my mammogram was on a Wednesday and the dread hit on Monday. I suppressed it. I tried to avoid it, and it really only consumed my Tuesday and Tuesday night and up until the test and the results. It was a little bit longer, but still, it showed the power of conscious coping, of being able to say, this is a logical fear. It's a cancer screening on its face value. It is, but only allowing that fear and dread, just the dread of it, the false narratives that I'm going to walk in like, Tuesday night, my last night of being cancer-free. This is the last dinner I'll have with my kids without them knowing I have cancer. That's where my brain is. And I used to do that for not just like the week, like months leading to the mammogram. And this time it was just one night. And I hope next time it's less. And I hope I just keep getting better. So not only did I want to share, but I wanted to promote, get your mammogram if you're a woman, get it if you're concerned, advocate for it. Mostly, conscious coping's working for me. It was nice to only allow my not cancer diagnosis to be a cancer diagnosis for 30 hours versus a month.
I mean, that's a big difference. That's a significant difference. I appreciate you bringing that to the table.
It was actually fascinating because I feel like my family didn't give me enough credit.
I think we need to do a whole episode on this about how people around you are not going to notice you changing. It'll be a long time after you have noticed it that they'll one day be like, oh, wow, you're different.
Yeah, I feel like
that's a human thing. We got to do a whole thing about that.
Yeah, because I made huge steps with my medical anxiety, and a lot of it is like I'll end up breaking out in a rash or something, and it manifests itself physically because you can't. Anxiety is anxiety, which is why we're doing what we're doing, right? You have to learn how to cope with it. But it's nice to be able to. I don't need the validation from other people because the quality of life improvement is the transformation that conscious coping and emotional endurance really brings to your life, which is who cares if my family, they're still going to make the joke at Thanksgiving about having a hypochondriac. I spent 3 months dreading my mammogram, but I'll know I only spent a day, and that was a huge improvement for me. I gained so much life back. I got the whole week leading up to it. I got to be in the moment. I got to enjoy my life and not sit in the dread. It's really built on false narratives, even if it's rational. I could have walked in and the girl next to me had a totally different day than I had, and that could have been me. But I didn't let it take the weeks, months leading up to it.
It's huge. That's growth. That's progress. I appreciate you bringing that here.
Thanks.
Yeah. And I'm going to make you watch this clip next year before you go in.
Yep. You know, I'm on.
I'll be like, I got something for you to see. Sit down.
Every April. Yep.
It's interesting. Mine, actually, I'm going to bring something that I was dreading, that it's layered, but the podcast, the emotional endurance movement actually helped me to clock something into my life and to reduce some dread. I'm pretty pumped about it. So I do the video editing for our show, and that means I get to have the joy of staring at our faces a lot. I will say there was a time in my life, probably 20 years ago, when I don't think I would have been able to do it because it's pretty vulnerable to look at yourself and edit yourself and stuff. But one of the things that has helped me do it is that when you're in grad school to become a therapist, we record ourselves, and then people will ask you about not just what your client's doing or what their experience is. Most of the questions have to do with you and how you're presenting. And that's not just your questions or your verbalizations. It's also like, how are you looking? How are you acting? What are your nonverbals? Like, it's all of it. And when you sit in a room with 12 to 15 other people and dissect your work like that, it's intense, but it does build a level of grit. And it's super important. Like, you couldn't make it successfully through grad school to be a therapist without doing that work. You have to do it. And video editing is kind of the same. If we want to put out a show, like, I got to look at myself. It just has to happen. There's no way through it. I can't AI myself out of it. At least not at this point in time.
Not yet.
Yeah, stay tuned. That might change. But for right now, I've been having this, like, so that's the backstory, okay? So I look at the video and all this. But this reoccurring interpersonal dynamic happened over the last 2.5 years where basically people look at me and completely misinterpret my emotional state. They think that I'm upset. They think I'm angry. They think I'm disapproving. They think I'm tired. They think I'm the guy that told me I was tired. I was like, really, dude? But that may be a one-off in a different direction, okay? But my point is like, I kept getting these like weird things, and I'm like, I don't feel that way. I'm not intending to give that off. Like, why am I giving that off? And it's becoming an uncomfortable thing. So the non-clinical term for this is resting bitch face, which I guess is also probably the clinical term too, because I don't know of a better clinical term. And I've just been kind of like wandering around, like being like, what do I do about this weird thing in my life? Because when people confront me about them, I tell it the truth. That's not how I feel. I'm sorry if that's how I'm presenting. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you saw or what you heard from me that made you think this way? Like, but at the end of the day, I mean, this is part of professional accountability and personal accountability. If you think someone's upset, you should go ask them and then listen to what they say. So that's how I've been handling it, but it's been kind of awkward, right? So fast forward the last like 4 months, we've been really consistent, showing up, doing the thing. Hi to all of our new followers. And I've been watching myself in these videos over and over and over. And guess what?
What?
I clocked it. I clocked the resting bitch face. I clocked it and I found it and I now know what's going on with it. That is me listening very deeply and intentionally. And what's actually happening is I think that because I'm listening so deeply and intentionally, I'm doing two key things that people don't necessarily realize. The first is my face does kind of go flat because I am a neurodivergent person. It's a lot to expect me to be able to keep the mask up and the internal processes. So I think the mask goes down. But again, I'm in a moment, this is me being vulnerable in these moments. I'm really listening to connect. The other thing is I am using all my effort to turn down my lovely, ongoing, repeated, chronic OCD voice that likes to tell me the literal worst possible thing that can happen at any moment in time. I'm just minding my own business and it's but what about this?
I have one of those.
But what about this? Just so annoying. And so when I really tune in, these two other systems get going and I think my nonverbals just they just shift. And I don't know that it's necessarily a wrong thing. I worked really hard to develop those skills. So I'm not going to say that I'm doing something wrong, but clearly it's causing a response in somebody else. And so all this to say is that the podcast has helped me to find some more intentional ways to understand what's happening, because a lot of times our communication dynamics, they're so vague and murky. It can be hard to understand. So watching the video, I was able to see what people were talking about. I was able to connect it to my own internal experience. And now my workflow when someone confronts me about this is just to tell them the truth like I've already been doing, which is, no, I don't feel that way. I feel this way, but I might have looked that way to you because I am neurodivergent. My brain processes differently. And when I am really listening, the mask kind of releases. It lets go a little bit. My nonverbals kind of flatten out a little bit. But that's actually a sign that I'm not tuned out or not emotionally available to you. It's actually opposite. I haven't done this level of deep dive on someone else in this way, but this is just me being intentional and really listening. And now I will say I still it's still hard to edit the videos. I don't know if the dread of that will ever really fully go away, but the dread of having this conversation, because I know my resting bitch face gets me in trouble. It will happen again. It now provides a really interesting avenue for me to talk about how I am consciously coping, just like what you said with yours, how you are consciously coping, which is just that it's a unique journey and nobody else may get it or understand it or validate it. And that's fine, because the quality of life I've gotten back and the quality of connection, even though my resting bitch face gets in the way sometimes, is so much better that it's going to be worth it always. And that's my show and tell.
I think one of the most interesting things about your show and tell this week is that you address something that I find varies culturally in our own country, but there is a strong discomfort being around someone who actually listens. I could imagine as a trained psychotherapist, you are trained to listen. You're trained to listen for patterns. You're doing so much more when you're listening. And I have felt that way as your business partner. And I don't take it the wrong way, because I assume good intentions because of our relationship. But sometimes I catch myself unnerved at the intensity. I'm is she listening that intent because she's annoyed? But it's never that. It's that I've had to learn how to modulate myself to be comfortable with someone actually listening, which says a lot about the superficiality of our world, right? And I think it totally makes sense to me that you would get that feedback from someone that wouldn't assume good intentions, because there's an unnerving aspect of being listened to. And we're always being talked at. And I just don't think a lot of people are used to being heard.
I say this in a lot of different spaces, but I think it's one of the most true things I say. We have created generations of speakers while neglecting creating generations of listeners.
Absolutely.
I did not really learn how to listen until I went to grad school to be a therapist.
Mine was college. I learned to listen in college. It took that long to understand the value of others' contributions.
It's an important and meaningful skill, and we have to attend to it. We have to practice it, right? Thank you for giving me that. That gives me another kind of piece too.
Yeah,
With
no,
all of
I
this.
could see that it's unconditional. It doesn't matter. But now I know you, but I could see that if I put myself back to 2 years ago when we started working together and we had to unpack really hard ideas and concepts. Had I just, if I didn't know your best intentions and know that, because to your credit, you don't only listen, but something else is that you actually implement feedback. You reset your expectations, which is such a great talent. And I feel like it's something everyone would say that they're good at, including myself, but I'm not. I listen to very few people. I have a panel of advisors. There's only people I listen to. But listening is something I've worked on my entire adult life. But I have to actively work towards it. And I feel like you've accomplished that. So yeah, people aren't used to people caring. They're listening. So
yeah, I think that brings up a good point. I do think it is probably an uncomfortable experience for people. The other thing I get a lot is, and I think this connects so well, I think people are uncomfortable that I'm a therapist and I'm listening. They think that I'm judging them or analyzing them or whatever. And I'm like, if you don't have an invoice in front of you, you are not going to get that level of.
I get paid for the critique.
Yeah, that's a different thing that we're dialing on. I'm listening, but I am not. Believe me, if I need anything to judge, I have a whole catalog of material within myself.
That was a good show and tell. Thank you, Lauren.
Now from a word from this week's skill of the week. This week's skill of the week is completing the stress cycle, aka metabolizing your emotions. Your body does not know your meeting ended. It does not know that the hard conversation is over. It does not know you survived the thing you were dreading. Your nervous system launched a stress response, and until you complete the cycle, the stress is still running in the background. Like an app you forgot to close. This is not a metaphor. This is neurobiology. The stress cycle starts with the stress cycle has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And most of us never reach the end. We just get stuck in the middle. We just start a new cycle on top of an old one, and this is not a mood problem over time. It becomes a metabolization problem. Completing the cycle is the physical signal to your body that the threat is gone and you made it through. It's literally just telling your body, we're safe now. You can take a little bit of a beat. Movement helps, crying does it, laughter does it, a long, slow exhale can nudge it forward. The goal is not to feel nothing. The goal is to move the stress through you instead of storing it within you. Remember, most feelings last for about 90 seconds. And even the complex ones usually have 90 seconds waves. So here's what I want you to do. Think of one thing you're carrying right now that you can put down. Not forever necessarily, just for now. A conversation you cannot have yet, a decision that does not need to be made, an outcome you cannot control, or something that just isn't going the way you thought it would. Just one thing that you could agree to press pause on. So now that you've got it, the best way to help your body actually believe it is to move physically, even for just 60 seconds, a walk around the block, shake your hands out, dance badly in your kitchen. Your body needs to complete the loop that your mind already closed. Movement is the receipt that tells your nervous system, we made it, we're safe now, we're okay, you can stop running. And that is the key to ending your stress cycle, just intentionally allowing the feeling to move through you, process it in a way that feels good or restorative, and then allow yourself to recognize that even if it's not over, the initial wave has passed and you can now focus on restoring and recovering so that you are ready for when the next wave comes. And that's all from this week's skill of the week. What was it? Ending the stress cycle.
Stress cycle.
And that's all from this week's skill of the week, completing the stress cycle. Now it is time for this week's game of the week, Dread versus Drama. Crimson, what are we up to today?
All right, Lori. So I have prepared different scenarios, and we have to tell whether we think it's worth the dread or if it might just be a dramatic narrative that we're dreading. So I'm going to say the statement, and then you're going to tell me dread or dramatic. You ready?
All right, let's go.
All right. Public speaking in front of coworkers. Dread or dramatic?
I mean, I wouldn't dread that at all. Does that mean that it would just be dramatic?
Yeah, it'd be dramatic. I think it's dramatic because if you're nervous to public speak in front of coworkers, you're writing a narrative that they actually care about what you're saying. You're writing a narrative that they're actually listening. And that's kind of being dramatic because those things are very unlikely. Does that make sense? Should we do it again or cut from that?
Just do another one. Let's do another one.
Okay. All right, Lori. Dramatic, dread versus dramatic. Sending a vulnerable text and not getting a reply immediately.
Drama, 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 drama. And I would fall into the dread so hard on that.
Right?
Yeah.
It's
I think there's a million reasons why people don't respond. In fact, I was out to lunch with a friend of mine last week, and she mentioned to me that she sent me a text the other day and I didn't respond, and it made her feel insecure. And I was like, so it happens.
I mean, I'm going through it right now. I have lunch or dinner with a mentor. He's like a elder in a organization I'm in. And I saw him say, and I'm like, am I in trouble? And he was like, well, we have lots to talk about. And I am in dread mode. And it's hilarious. I do this with him. I've known him a decade. And it's always nothing. And I know I'm writing all these stupid narratives. So I'm doing the dread thing, but it's dramatic. I'll tell you Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay. Going to a networking event alone versus dramatic.
Dread.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, it's just the small talk piece is really hard for me. I was at a conference this weekend. I love speaking in front of people. It's so great. And then we get done and I like to sit at the back of the room in like a sparse table. And then all the people are coming around. They're like, Lori, what are you doing? Lori, are you sitting all alone? I am definitely not sitting all alone. My friend that I just met at this table, who is also sitting quietly, just went to the buffet line. Okay. And she'll be back. All right. And then my other friend, who is the magician for the evening, came around not once, not twice, but 3 times to let me know that he had a seat for me at the very front. And on the 3rd time, he was like, you need to move up there so that my standing ovation for my video looks nice and full. And I was like, dang it. Okay.
That is hilarious.
Thankfully, he didn't. I was worried he was going to pull like a rabbit out of my ear. So I'm glad that didn't happen. And it was great. It was a really fun time. I really enjoyed being in the front row. But that is not really where I would normally sit because there's a lot of small talk. And small talk for me is hard. I don't know why. It's much easier for me to talk to a group than it is the small talk. I do not know why I'm wired that way. I just am. But the point is that networking on my own is like dread. But I'll do it. And in fact, I can tell you there have been multiple times when I was dreading an event like that, and it's actually gone really well. So my nervous system just hasn't quite caught up with reality on this one yet.
Yeah, I think for me, it's dramatic because of that. I dread it in the same way I dread going to the gym or I dread my kids' recital.
Well, yeah, it's getting the reps in, right?
Yeah, there's a boring aspect to it. But at the end of the day, the narratives you write about those events and the importance of them, we're all awkwardly standing there like, this sucks, but give me money or give me a job or whatever it is that you're there for. And I think at this point in my life when I dread it kind of, but I don't let it get dramatic. I don't let my dread get to the dramatic point because I know in my head the narrative that just showing up means a lot to people, especially the people that organize the events. Nobody's really there to judge the way you show up. So I've gotten used to it, but there's a healthy level of dread about it. But taking it to the extent not to be dramatic. Okay. Well, all right. Posting something vulnerable online, dread or dramatic?
What do you say?
Dramatic. I've been
Say more.
my window for tolerance on caring about social narratives has decreased and minimalized as I've gotten older and as those mediums have become more diluted and more full of really toxic behaviors. So that answer might have been different a while ago, but I mean, my husband will be the first to say I'm always very vulnerable and I'm pretty good at taking the heat if needed. But I guess it's kind of half and half, right? Because there is drama that comes with vulnerable posts, depending on what it is. So there is literal drama that can result. But for me, I'm just kind of at the point where if it means something to me enough to post it, I probably don't care what the haters gonna hate. You know, but I'll be that in like a blow off way, but I'm just old.
I have been repeatedly putting content out on social media, very vulnerable content across the spectrum of that. And honestly, it doesn't seem to make a difference.
Right.
So might as well just make stuff that feels real and good. And I think you and I are in this interesting space where we have been more consistent this last 5 months of making content and really getting it out. And we plan to continue to do so. And part of the reason is because we are longing to connect with the people that we know out here are doing the work and need support. We know that there's more than just me and Crimson who are doing this stuff. And we get this affirmed so much when we go out to conferences and we hear what people are doing and we hear the need for that support. I think we spent most of last year kind of dreading putting stuff out there because it was scary. It was scary to have a message and to try and build a platform. And then I think after a year of it being scary, you and I kind of just were like, well, like if we're going to do it, let's do it. And then we showed up and we've been doing it consistently. And I really don't feel, like I said, I talk about the dread a little bit with editing the videos and just having to look at our video that long, but I don't dread putting our stuff out. And our stuff's been vulnerable. Like it's been real. Real shit's been happening to us. I mean, I talked about my resting bitch face. It's not like that's my most favorite topic to talk about.
I talked about my boobs.
Yeah, come here to the emotional endurance movement for the real vulnerable conversation. And it is much less dread and more just recognizing like the drama and the noise of it because we've been consistent.
Right.
And we've gotten our reps in. And I feel like I built my resilience to it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, ask me again when we go viral for doing something stupid.
I'm here for it. It sounds way better than
I feel
trying the
equipped.
legit way that we're doing.
This has been an interesting thing for us too as content creators, pulling the curtain back a little bit on this, is that when we first started, we just didn't even really get disengagement. Like nobody was really hearing us. Now we get a decent mix of likes and we get dislikes. And we believe fundamentally, even though it is hard and it feels a little dialectical and opposing to say this, we believe if we're turning people off, we're probably doing something right. Our biggest challenge was just not hearing anything.
To the fear of no one else is doing this. No one else wants to do the work. And there wasn't an interest in talking about mental health in a way that's not diagnostic or clinical, but
and not doom and gloom.
Practical.
But like, yeah, you can do this. Crimson and I both talked about serious ways that we've made meaningful changes on our day-to-day life just by practicing this stuff. And I do think that the emotional endurance movement is another form of this practice for us. I think us getting on here and being real and vulnerable about how this plays out in our life and sharing it consistently has made us more resilient to these conversations. So yeah, I'm with you. It's more drama now than dread.
Yeah.
And I hope it stays that way. That's all for this week's episode of the Emotional Endurance Movement. Please take a chance to like, follow, and subscribe for more great coping content. And we hope to see you back next week where you bring the feelings.
And we'll bring the games.
Bye.
Peace out.